computer. Hi. This is the meeting for memorial worship at Philadelphia, and I am introducing Jean Warrington of the Fairhill Burial Grounds, who will be speaking to our adult education group. Jean?
Hello, friends. We're delighted to be here with you today to tell us what's happening at the 300-year-old burial ground in North Philadelphia, Fairhill. I'm Jean Warrington, a member of Chestnut Hill Friends Meeting, and I've been working on this project since 2004 and just love it. I'm the executive director now, soon to retire from that job, but I'll stay connected, I'm sure, in some way. And tonight we have Sally Harrison, our board president, who's a member of our meeting. And I would like to let our history educator, Carolyn Singleton, introduce herself. We're going to be doing this together.
Okay, hello everyone. And again, I'm Carolyn Singleton, and I work with Historic Fairhill doing class tours with the little children, and also monthly tours with adults and children on the second Saturday of the month. And so I'm happy to be here with you to share information about Historic Fairhill.
So what we're going to talk about today is first the 300-year-old story of this wonderful site, the early Quaker founding of this. And then Carolyn's going to talk about the 150-year-old story of the great abolitionists and early women's rights activists buried there. And then we're going to splice in the history and also the murals. There are these wonderful wall murals that tell the story of social justice history in Philadelphia. Carolyn is especially qualified to do this because she's been an alternatives to violence trainer at Graterford Prison. And when she talks to school groups about the healing walls, she really knows what she's talking about, and it's very moving for the students and the adults who hear this tour. Then we're going to move on to what's happening today. We're going to talk about our big community garden program, really an urban farm. And then we'll talk about our work in our neighborhood schools. So that's what we'll cover. We'll show you slides, and then we'll have time for questions afterwards. Okay, let's hope the technology works. Can you see these pictures? I hope that you can.
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Thumbs up if you can see these pictures. Yes, good. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Fairhill Burial Ground, founded by Quakers in 1703. This land, of course, was Lenape land. The king decided that he would take possession, and he gave it to William Penn, a troublemaker, Quaker, and the king owed a lot of money to his father. So young William had a great deal of land given to him. He founded Philadelphia, and Pennsylvania as a holy experiment. This is our first mural that's 2 blocks away. He had a vision of peace and equality, and yet he enslaved people. So we have to be frank about our Quaker history here in Philadelphia. Penn gave the land to George Fox, one of the founders of Quakerism. And Fox visited once. He came to Philadelphia once. And when he died, he left this land in his will to friends for a meeting house, a schoolhouse, and a burying ground, and for a playground for the children in the town to play on, and for a garden to plant with physical plants for lads and lasses to make simples and learn to make oils and ointments. So here we are, 330 years later, and children of the town are doing just that. So Carolyn's going to talk to us about the history through these murals.
Okay, so the first mural that we have here, which is just elegant when you look at it, is the Underground Railroad mural. And the largest figure you see is Harriet Tubman. And please note that in the lower right-hand corner, you see Fairhill Burial Ground, all right? And when adults and students come, I try to draw parallels between the past and the present, because lots of times, the people who are depicted here, or anytime you think about history, you think about people who were just very different long ago, not experiencing the things that we're experiencing now, but the same strengths that they had in order to survive what they had to survive at that time, which was slavery, are some of the same things that we're experiencing today with social justice, dealing with issues affecting African Americans or people of color here in the United States. So the figures that you see here, you have Harriet Tubman, and you have Lucretia Mott to the left of her, and you have Mr. Purvis to the right of her, Robert Purvis. And everyone knows that Lucretia and Robert are buried at Fairhill Burial Ground. And when people come, especially the children, they're always surprised to know that these historic figures are buried right there across the street. And then we have William Still. And this year we celebrated the 200th year of his birth. And so, again, very relevant. The mural is very relevant. And then going around, we have our stories with Henry Box Brown up in the right-hand corner, and the children love that. I think every child who has come to historic Fairhill has heard the story. It's been taught in their classroom about Henry Box Brown. And around the periphery, you see all of the names, and each name would represent either a conductor or a passenger or a station master. And so going through, what I try to do is just give a little insight and draw parallels between the struggle in the past and the struggle that we still have today, and the same courage that they had to have in order to survive then, we have to have now. Up at the top, it says, a few of the many who gave of themselves for others. One day, and I want to mention this only because there were some police officers who came out for a tour. And, I was really taken back by the fact that they really enjoyed the mural tour, especially this mural. And they had driven up and down Germantown Avenue. They served the people there in the community, but they had never really taken time to look at the mural. And one of the things that I shared with them is that just like police officers put their lives on the line every day for people who they don't even know, the figures here in the picture, Robert Purvis, Lucretia Mott, Harriet Tubman, William Still, all of the people who are listed around the periphery of the mural, they also put their lives on the line for people who they didn't know, for strangers, complete strangers. And so that would be my introduction as far as this particular mural, which I just find fascinating whenever I look at it. And here, focusing on Robert Purvis, again, buried there at historic Fairhill and buried right next to his wife, and who was right here, Harriet Purvis. And Harriet Purvis, she, worked on two issues. She worked with regard to social justice and race, but also social justice with regard to women. And here we have the executive board of the Abolition Society of 1848. And you have you have Lucretia Mott front row seat. And you can see how small she was. And then you have Robert Purvis sitting next to her. And then you have others here who, again, all devoted to the abolition movement. And here we have James and Lucretia. It says, traveled widely preaching anti-slavery. Very feisty woman. And I understand that she actually attended your friend's where you do your service. So I'm interested in hearing more about that she actually attended, there for worship.
Oh yeah, she preached. She preached at Arch Street and then and then Cherry Street.
And then Cherry Street, okay. The Female Anti-Slavery Society held the first meeting, and here you have, again, women who were working together, you know, for women's rights, but then you had them also coming together to fight anti-slavery. And over to the right, you have Lucretia Mott, and up at the top, you have it says, "Am I not a man and a brother?" And then to the left, "Am I not a woman and a sister?" And and then we have the burning of Pennsylvania Hall, where, as you may know, you have a mob scene, and when I look at it now, very similar to January 6th, where they just didn't like the idea that Blacks and whites were coming together to meet. And so they decided to burn the hall down, and it took a while for the firefighters to come intentionally. You know, according to the historic record, you know, they took their time coming on purpose to put it out. And this was the mob that destroyed the Pennsylvania Hall.
And they didn't turn those hoses on Pennsylvania Hall. They let it burn to the ground after only 3 days. That was the first convention held there, and they burned it down.
Where was the, oh, I'm sorry.
There's a good story about that, but we'll move along and we can always get back to that.
Sure.
Okay.
So Mott was a tireless activist. She was involved in many issues. She saw all issues and struggles for human rights to be related. So she worked on abolition, and the women's rights movement grew right out of the abolition of slavery movement. She and Elizabeth Cady Stanton met each other at the World Anti-Slavery Convention in 1840. And then 8 years later, Mott was up in upstate New York, and there was a tea party of 5 women, and 2 of them were buried at Fairhill. Lucretia Mott, Marianne McClintock. And they had, in 10 days, they organized that convention. They needed a document, so they rewrote the Declaration of Independence. "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal." James Mott actually clerked the first day. So that was the start, and you know, enormous change from that one as well. Carolyn, would you do this Philadelphia history now?
Sure. Okay, so it has here, you can see the trolley cars. For 100 years, North Philadelphia factories offered jobs to immigrants. But the other thing that's important here is that they weren't integrated. And so there were a lot of efforts, a lot of Blacks involved in helping to integrate the trolley cars, because for the longest time they weren't. In the 1980s, factories closed and drugs became Fairhill's economy. And, you know, I'm sure if you walk through Fairhill, you'll be able to identify this corner, but it looks very different now. And also as far as the burial ground, where it's just, it's dilapidated, and a lot of trash, abandoned cars, burnt out cars. And there was a drug cartel there for a period of maybe 3 or 4 years, and maybe longer, in the late 1990s and the early part of 2000. And here you have Peaches Ramos, who was a neighborhood organizer, and she led the campaign against the drug dealers and worked with the police. And when you meet her, you can't help but to have respect for her. She's older now, but you know, she still has that feistiness, and her goal was to clean the neighborhood and make the neighborhood safe for children. That was her main goal, making the neighborhood safe for children. And to live in a neighborhood where you're afraid for your child as soon as they walk out the front door, no quality of life. And so again, it was her goal to clean up the neighborhood. And here you have some people who are helping, you know, with that struggle, trying to clean the neighborhood. But as far as Peaches is concerned, you have her here. And you can see how young she was. I mean, I'm looking at her now. She looks like she was about 20 years old. I feel like I could be her mother. But again, working with the police and working with the community. And then later, again, here she is with the braids up against the fence. But later, after cleaning up the neighborhood, helping to clean up the neighborhood, a lot of the people who were there actually, doing the criminal activity were at Graterford. And so when she met with them, this is a tribute to Peaches Ramos. This is the mural to celebrate her. And what I was about to say is that she went to, a lot of the criminals were at Graterford. And so she actually met with them, and they actually contributed to the painting of these murals. This is drugs and mass incarceration still plague Fairhill. This is a mural depicting, hope, love, looking to the future. And this one right here, the healing walls, victim's journey and inmate's journey. And meeting the people who helped to work on the mural at Graterford was, was a wonderful experience, because when I do the tours, especially of the healing walls, I try to convey their message, not only what's depicted in the mural themselves, but the words that they convey to me, and the pain and aspirations that they have living behind bars.
Okay, so we're going to move now ahead to today. Friends cleaned up and reopened the site. Took 3 years before they could even cut the grass. When you leave nature alone for 7 years, it had become really overgrown. We've got gardens now where kids are working outside. We have several satellite gardens now. This is the corner of 9th and Indiana. Here you see the mural of Peaches. And here are neighbors Carrie and Hector. Carrie takes care of one of the corner lots and Hector the other. And they want them to be there to memorialize the murals, the history, and for the neighbors. We have started a tree tenders chapter with the Horticult PHS and have planted 125 trees on the surrounding blocks, which really makes a very big difference in our neighborhood. Our neighbors Tito and Jorge wanted to learn how to grow healthy food. They wanted to be independent and healthy, and so PHS supplies the seedlings. This is Dennis, our grounds manager. He's got the know-how. He's been doing this for years. And these two guys have become urban farmers. Tito is now our lead gardener. Jorge is on our board. And this is what that garden looks like. You build it, you put in fresh dirt, and you water it, and it's a kind of a miracle. The gardens and the orchard produce fresh fruits and vegetables for the neighbors. This is Crystal, our QVS volunteer from last year. Some of you may remember her. She's now working at another job in Philadelphia. She comes back to help. This is Jay. His grandmother was the one who first called the Friends in 2002. He got a hold of Margaret Bacon at the Friends Center, or she did, his grandmother. So here we are, 27 years later. This little boy comes over every Saturday. He's got a little job of harvesting and watering and helping with the farm stand. This is a little crew that loads up with produce and takes their little bell, and they walk up and down the streets giving their produce away. Derek is a volunteer who speaks Spanish, who talks to the neighbors, and the farm wagon has regular customers now. This is the weekly farm stand that's opposite the school. All during COVID, the school was giving out box lunches, and then the parents would come across the street to this garden to pick up fresh produce, and then the kids would take them into the garden to show them and how they work with the plants. So we have now big gardens in the historic burial ground, but also satellite gardens producing the food. Tasha and her daughter Leanna volunteer. Everybody wants to get outside. If you've been cooped up in your apartment or your house for a year and a half, you just need to get outside. So the gardens have meant more than ever this last year. Christina asked for help to build a garden on an empty lot. And look what she's done with it the first summer. Neighbors now have birthday parties and picnics and baby showers outside in that garden. And it's just such a community resource, to have an abundant garden. And there's Tito with neighbor kids, and they're picking tomatoes through October, collards and kale through Christmas. So here's a map of our partners' gardens with a little leaf there. You can see here's the burial ground, the 4.5 acres. It's right on Germantown Avenue. So if you come up from Arch Street, it's very close to Broad Street, 2900 block. So just 3 miles north of City Hall. We've got gardens at the Evelyn Sanders Townhomes, at the Auburn Street, at the Halfway House, at Potter Thomas School, Julia de Burgos School, Lighthouse Head Start. And then we've got these individual, not organizations, but and there's one, the Madrasa Daycare Center down the street. But more and more people want to have gardens, and so we help. So now we're going to talk about the literacy. These are the apples show that our partners' schools in the neighborhood. So in 2009, all the Philadelphia school libraries were closed. All the librarians were laid off because of the budget crisis. And this one, when we came to Julia de Burgos at 4th and Lehigh, bringing our reading tutors there, one of our volunteers asked the principal, is that a library? Did that used to be a library? Would you like some help reopening it? And the principal, just shook his head and said, every year I've tried to do this, but I don't have the staff. I don't have the money. We're too busy. So on MLK Day in 2016, a bunch of teachers came and Quaker volunteers, and we cleaned the rug, and we contacted the architect, Vincent Rivera, who built the school only in 2002, recently. He told us where to put the shelves. And in 2000, late 15, early 16, we reopened this library. So it's just a beautiful, hopeful place. There's a computer catalog where kids can look for books by keyword or author or title. It's a happy place with exciting books. These girls in the 4th grade were reading a story that was so moving to them that they burst into tears. So you give a kid a book that is that exciting and relevant to her life, then there's a reason to learn how to read well. So libraries have become real motivators for kids learning how to read, and reading opens the world. We bring guest artists in. This is a performance of Letters to Aunt Hattie by the Beacon Theater production. This is Gigi McGraw, who wrote and acted in this production about Harriet Purvis and her niece. History plays, and every year they've done one. Under the Bonnet was about Lucretia, and last year it was Meet Joanne Robinson, about the woman who organized the Montgomery boycott. So we try to bring history education that is lively and informative and inspiring to the kids. 2018, we opened the Hartrant School Library. This is Sierra Vargas, bilingual powerhouse. This woman is doing it by herself, and she's a former Head Start teacher, so she's just done a wonderful job there. When COVID closed the schools and the libraries, we took the books outside, and we had free book tables. When the parents came to pick up lunches, there were free books there. This is Mrs. Guzman, who is our library teacher at de Burgos. And every community event, we have a free book table. We have a little free library at the burial ground. So we're always trying to get books home with kids. In 2021, which is like last week, we've reopened the Potter Thomas School Library. And here we have Jessica Kahn in the middle. This is her 10th library that she has helped digitize. So our volunteers help her all summer. We worked on it. On the left is Vanessa, who is are going to be our 3-day-a-week library coordinator there. And Ike Pickett is our new QVS volunteer. And Ike will be there 3 days a week also. One thing we realized about 6 years ago was that our kids are coming into school 2 and 3 years behind. There aren't books at home. Often there isn't an adult with the time or ability to read in English. So the kids really need help. So we now hire bilingual parents and grandparents to be aides in the K-2 classrooms at the Burgos school. And this has made an enormous difference in those classrooms. They are able to translate for the parents, comfort the kids, and just be really indispensable help for the teachers. Here's another one of our parent assistants for literacy. These parents have become skillful employees, and it's a real job. They're paying into Social Security, and it's really good for the kids and also good for our parents who are having these jobs. Annabelle Maldonado during COVID did a lot of tech support because many of our parents who were given a Chromebook, every kid was given a Chromebook. Many parents had never had internet before and were having a lot of trouble with it. So our bilingual parent assistants did a lot of tech support. Sometimes they went to people's houses and asked them to bring it out on the sidewalk and help them learn how to use it. She also earned her college degree and was hired by the school district. So she's done really well. Our volunteers are reading buddies, and Sally Harrison has done this for a couple of years, so she'll tell you about it in a little bit maybe. They work one-on-one directed by the teachers. Some are elementary school teachers like Sharon, retired teachers, others are not at all. Jenny is a beautician and owns a beauty parlor, but she has a day off a week and this is what she wants to do with it. The kids just love the one-on-one attention, and the teachers say that it's made a difference. Carolyn, would you do your field trips?
Sure. As a matter of fact, I think that's a picture of me over by the tree. I think it was a windy day that day. These are children. They're probably from Julio de Burgos. I'm not sure, but they come and they experience the everything that you're experiencing right now. The mural tour, and they do gardening, they play games. This is a mural tour, and they actually pay attention, which is really interesting. And they ask questions, they answer the questions, and they're really engaged. And here we have children who are standing by the burial ground, the burial site for, looks like Robert Purvis. And I can't see it. My picture is very small. Okay, there we are. Okay, so we have Harriet and, Harriet Fortin and Robert Purvis, and they're from Sankofa. Sankofa and Ujima students come for nature summer camp here. They were here this past summer, and I got a chance to spend the day with them, not the same students, but another group, and we just had a great day. And the focus of their curriculum is learning about Black history. And so it was an enjoyable day spending with them. This picture here wasn't this year's camp. I think it was last year's camp. What year was this particular camp? It wasn't this year, but 2 years ago.
Yeah, this picture is 2 years ago, but
2 years ago. Okay, because
camp this summer. Yeah.
They came this summer. That's why I was looking at the faces, and they didn't look familiar. So so again, just they were here this summer for camp, and it was a great day spending time with them. They had all of the answers. During COVID, when people are stuck in their apartments, I don't know if you want to do this, Jean, and I think I may have been here this day when they were doing the sledding. And I wasn't here for this day, so you may want to take that over for the snow person.
Well, just getting outside and being able to be outside without your mask, running around, making snow people, cooking marshmallows. These are things that people can do if they live in the country or the suburbs, and not usually in Fairhill. So it's been wonderful to open this up to people. Last holiday, last Christmas and winter holiday, we put up 10,000 LED lights. Robert Smith is a friend from Germantown. And I said to him, Robert, how can we hang lights? We don't have any electricity there. And he said, well, so let's use motorcycle batteries. So we did. And Aisha Mani from Sankofa and Ujima says, maybe we'll light them for Kwanzaa this year. So now that we know how to do it, it was very beautiful last year. Well, then when spring comes, spring came back again. We still had COVID. And nature returns to life. It's so beautiful. The urban farmers get busy again, prepping the beds and planting them. Our nature guides teach the kids in the school and the community gardens. This, I think, is the Evelyn Sanders Garden, which is just a half a block north in the Evelyn Sanders townhomes. There's a little garden that we show the kids how to work. On Saturdays, all this year, we've been open for health and wellness, for a place where kids can come outside and work in the garden and eat some healthy vegetables and play. Somebody gave us a foosball table, so the kids had a great time playing with that one day. Badminton, hadn't seen that before. Croquet, the little free library. It's got good books in it. You can just sit on a quiet bench and read a book. Under the trees, it's about 10 degrees cooler than it is in the hot summer. Once a year, we have ponies at our summer festival. Everybody loves to be the ponies. And the Philly Goat Project has come twice, which is just a big hit. Everybody loves to pat the goat. The Religious Leaders Council of Philadelphia call historic Fairhill a zone of peace. And that's what we're trying to do. So we hope you'll come for a tour. Some of you have been with us from the very beginning. You helped clean the place up 27 years ago. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Arch Street would like to rent a van and come up, or everybody come up on the bus, and we'll get hoagies from the bodega and we can have a nice time together. You can help by collecting children's books. You can volunteer in the school libraries and the gardens. You can make a financial contribution. You can advise us about grants and other funders. So in the chat, I've put our email address. So if you'd like to get on our newsletter list and find out what's going on, we'd love to have you do that. So those are our pictures, and we're ready to answer any questions that you might have.
Great.
Oh, and here's my shirt.
Oh, that's great, Jean. Good. I'd just like to add that Tom Williams is a member of our board as well. And I know you all know Tom Williams from Arch Street meeting.
Question. So Lucretia Mott, she was from Arch Street meeting, correct? Is that correct?
She was until the
Okay.
split, and then
Okay.
she had to decamp to Cherry Street. Mhm.
Okay.
I think she was at Arch Street for yearly meeting when yearly meeting was held there. And then there were a bunch of monthly meetings in Philadelphia at that time. I'm not sure which her monthly meeting was. It could have been Arch Street, which is formally called Monthly Meeting of Friends of Philadelphia, which is the oldest meeting in the city. Yeah, no, she's famous for having preached at Arch Street meeting.
Okay.
She was a force. Frederick Douglass called her the most powerful anti-slavery preacher in America. I guess after Frederick Douglass. And she was, just relentless. But she never was read out of meeting. I guess she was so charming and so impressive that they just couldn't get rid of her, even though she was, she didn't give anybody a break. She was taking orders from her lord, and slavery was an evil and it had to be done away with immediately with all her heart and strength. So it took a long time, but she was quite the leader.
I could say a few words about reading buddies, which you suggested earlier, Jean. I was a reading buddy for 4 years until the pandemic started, and like everything else, it just bam came to a close. Last year, I did it for a while online, which was indeed very, very frustrating. There were other people who stuck with it longer, but this year we're hoping to get reading buddies back in the school in about a month, I guess. Fingers crossed, of course. What I loved about it was having that relationship with the kids. I was working in a kindergarten class each time. And, kindergartners in my mind are the best. They just have these minds that are sponges and they just soak in all the stuff. And they really got into reading. And for instance, one of my very favorite kids' books is Cat in the Hat. I hope you all know that the little sister's name is Sally. And so I would get out Cat in the Hat to read it to them. And usually the response was, "Oh, I've seen the video." And I would say, "Listen to the book, it's even better." And they'd kind of look at me like, "Really?" Anyway, I love that very much. The kids are just super and seem so appreciative of the one-on-one attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested, talk to any of us on the call.
How many murals are there? And where are I mean, they're all down Germantown Avenue? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's correct. There are two right across on Germantown Avenue, right across from the burial ground. And then if you go one block down, and you have to actually be looking for it, you have to look up. That's where you have the healing walls. And if you're going away from Lehigh, then they would both be on your right. But then in order to see the tribute to Peaches, that is that Indiana?
Yeah.
Is that the corner?
I think that's 9th in Indiana, right?
9th
That's
in
right.
Indiana. Right. That's there. Right. But on Germantown Avenue, again, you can't help but to miss the Underground Railroad mural, because it to me it just hits you in the face. But I had driven up and down Germantown Avenue many times, and I hadn't seen the healing walls. And when I did notice them, it was all of a sudden you can't miss them, after you notice it for the first time. And a lot of people from the neighborhood, they walk by, but they really don't pay attention. It's like living in Philadelphia, but never having seen the Liberty Bell, that type of thing. And so it's the same type of experience.
So they're painted by the Mural Arts program, or is it something separate?
Right, it's done by the Mural Arts program, but I think what they do is they delegate it to certain artists to actually do the painting.
Now, I'm on the board of the Aces Museum at 5801 Germantown Avenue, which of course is a lot further down. And there are murals all the way down. Sometimes I walk back towards Center City to catch my bus, and I just walk past one mural after another. So that's interesting. Yeah. So Germantown Friends was given, that was part of the piece of land that George Fox gave.
No, Germantown Friends School is about 2 miles further uphill,
right,
away from the city.
No, I know where it is. So that's not near Fairhill Cemetery.
That would be yeah, it's 2 miles away. That would have been a different grant. I'm not sure where that land came from, but
I see. So what was the meeting house that was built?
well, the Fairhill Meeting House. It was a
I see.
preparatory meeting. It was a
I
little tiny brick building in 1703 that had to be torn down when the city grid got that far up. But
Okay.
the second one now is 1883, and it's right across the street. It's now St. John's Memorial Baptist Church with Reverend Nathaniel Holder, who's really a good neighbor. He does a food pantry there every week, and we often have our vegetables there. Yeah, so he's a good neighbor. But we only own the burial ground now. We're looking. We're trying to get an indoor space so that we can have an office there and meeting space. But if we have large meetings like our essay contest or big classes, we can always use the meeting house. They're very generous letting us use it.
It was a functioning meeting house until the 50s, was it, Jean? 1950s, I think.
Well, Jim Glacken, who was on our board, grew up in that meeting house.
Right.
I think there was a small congregation there until the early 60s.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, then it was sold away.
So they cared for the burial ground. And then when the church property and the burial ground, well, the church was sold and they didn't, my understanding is that group didn't pay much attention to the burial ground, and that's when it fell into disrepair.
Well, both properties were sold in 85 with an endowment to keep it up, but it was the biggest open air crack cocaine market in the city. I mean, it was just so much money was being made on that corner, and it just was terrorizing the neighborhood. And the friends just couldn't keep going, so they sold it. And that's how everybody felt about it. The police would drive by and the people would scatter and they'd be right back. Until Peaches Ramos came along and organized the neighbors, there wasn't anything that could be done about it. But what an example of one woman's courage, then organizing everybody to get together. Then the police were able to have support within the neighborhood, and that's how they finally cleaned it up. It's quite the story. 150 years ago, a small group took on an enormous social injustice, and 30 years ago, well, 27 years ago, similar story.
How is it now, the neighborhood? How is that neighborhood now? Is it?
Our kids can take a little farm wagon up and down the streets with free vegetables. I mean, it's.
And is it a pretty good size? Is it cleaned up in a pretty far in both directions, or is it still the dangerous?
Well, the opioid crisis has moved east over to Kensington, moved a half a mile or a mile east. We still have trouble. I mean, drug gangs are still having shootouts in our neighborhood. The police asked me if Peaches would get involved again, and I called her and said, "Would you do it again, Peaches?" Because there was a gang murder, and about every year or so there's one not too far away. And she said, I knew all their mothers, so back then I could do it, but I can't do it now. These are older gangs, and I don't know them. And so
It's never ending. We just have to keep on keeping on forever. There's no sense in thinking or believing that once we clean it up, that's it's cleaned up.
that's right.
Sure.
That's right.
So
It's also the highest poverty rate of any zip code in the city. We've got a pretty poor city, so that's saying something.
Yeah, there was a murder outside Dr. Hankins' office. She's the owner and founder of ACES Museum at 5801 Germantown Avenue. And for the 9/11, the night before the 9/11 ceremony. Yeah. So I mean, it's going on all the time. It's really.
5801 come in. Where does that come in? 5801.
Price Street.
Shelton Avenue.
Yes, it's one block from Shelton. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's Vernon Park. And Vernon Park has a huge statue for Franz Pistorius, And Franz came from Germany in 1683. And in 1688, he hooked up with the Germantown Quakers. So that they were there in 1688. I've forgotten that. And Fairhill was 1691. So that was 3 years later. But in 1688, Franz Pistorius and the Germantown Quakers put together some kind of document trying to get everyone released from slavery. I mean, that's what they were. Yeah. So
That historic plaque. That
Yeah.
plaque is right there on Germantown Avenue. You just drive right by it going north.
yes, well, but the statue says that too. I mean, there's it's pretty spectacular. So I mean, all this, it's interesting because George Fox was not terribly opposed to slavery, and I don't know whether that's because he wasn't aware of it or aware of the extent of it, or whether there was political pressure. But he didn't come out and slam it. But it was, I just found it absolutely fascinating. In 1688, there was a concerted effort to get rid of slavery in Philadelphia. And it didn't happen for quite some time. Yeah.
Friends finally said no member of the society could own people in about 1775, I think it was. So it took another 90 years after that.
Yeah, it took him. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah, that was
at Arch Street. We had all the history of course, Arch Street that was in this vault that we had, and then finally it got so full that Bryn Mawr said they would take all our history, and so there was a concerted effort. I happened to be a member of the meeting at the time, and we all took all of these files out from all the minutes and everything, and we put them all on big tables, and it was just incredible. And I remember when I started looking at them, and I don't remember exactly what date it was right now, but seeing when that change took place of slavery, when they stopped having slaves, and it was awesome. Everybody was quiet. It was a moment of quietness when we realized how important that was, and still is. It was really something. It was pretty. Anyway,
Wow.
won't ever forget it.
Yeah. Wow.
So the work continues.
Yes, it does.
But what we know is how resilient and how resourceful our neighbors are. And working with those kids is very, very satisfying.
Good.
Wow. Jean, how long have you been doing this, Jean?
We moved back to Philadelphia after 30 years away. And Signe Wilkinson took me to Fairhill on Christmas Eve, 2002, to deliver cookies to her buddies, block captains, Hector Cologne, Peaches. And I thought, what a story this is. So I made a movie called The Struggle for Fairhill, and it's on our website. It tells the story of Margaret Bacon, the biographer of Mott, Quaker, white Quaker woman, and Peaches Ramos, our Puerto Rican block captain, our local hero, and Beatrice Streeter, the African-American pastor who at the time owned the old Fairhill Meeting House. And these three women from three different cultures just decided they'd had enough. So they organized all their communities. And, as I said, once the police had neighbors ready to work with them, then they could shut down the biggest open air crack cocaine market in the city. That was the burial ground of Lucretia Mott. And, ever since then, so I've been working at for about, 16 or 17 years. We've tried a lot of different things and worked with wonderful partners. And, we've got a nonprofit. Sally Harrison's the president, and we've reopened 4 school libraries, and we have 5 big school gardens, and We've brought a lot of kids, brought them along. Carolyn's given a lot of great history tours, so we welcome you. Bring your.
So it sounds like Lucretia Mott reached out and grabbed you around the neck and
Yes,
told
she
you what to
did.
do. She didn't
did.
stop.
That's
She
right.
hasn't
What would
stopped.
Lucretia do? We ask ourselves that every day.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. That's really terrific.
We feel very fortunate to have such an opportunity to serve and to be in community like this.
Yeah, that's
It's
wonderful.
really it's a joy. Frustrating sometimes because there's so many obstacles in front of our neighbors, but take courage from them.
But sure, I mean, just think of the obstacles that we see, but then there are the people who are living right in it, you know, they're the ones that are suffering. Boy,
Carolyn, how do you think our neighborhood's changed in the times you've been there? What are your
Well,
thoughts?
even from the beginning when I was there, you know, I never really felt, I always felt safe. And, you know, when I think about that, when I hear the conversation about, you know, crime and, you know, have things really changed, I think part of the reason why I may have felt safe is because when I would come to the neighborhood, people knew that I was associated with Historic Fairhill, and they knew that I was there to do good work. And I think that there was an immediate acceptance because of that. So I never really felt that I was in danger or anything like that, because people know what's being done at Historic Fairhill. They may not know the particulars, but they know that good work is being done. And so usually people in the neighborhood will look out for people who are trying to do the right thing. And yeah, and I've seen that up close and personal, where they will look out for you, and you know, they know who's there to do bad deeds and who's there to do good deeds. So I never felt any sense of danger. Now, would I walk, you know, down the street at 1 a.m. in the morning? No, I would not. Be wise, okay, but yeah, I think that I feel comfortable. But you're always going to run into that you know, situation where it's just the, you know, wrong place, wrong time, and that can be anywhere. And so those are my thoughts. Yeah.
Well, this has been super. I totally appreciate all the information you brought us and the really well-prepared presentation you had and all the information you've had for answering questions. This has been delightful. I will be posting this on YouTube, and I'll send you the link as soon as it's up. It should be up sometime this week. And again, thank you very much. There's something you want to say before I stop the recording?
If anybody wants to get our newsletter, just contact us at info@Historic Fairhill, or check out our website. We have a new website. I think you'll like it. historicfairhill.com.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.